Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to the How of Business podcast. This is Henry Lopez. And on this episode, I'll share my thoughts on how to craft an effective sales pitch. Crafting an effective sales pitch isn't about being slick or pushy or manipulative. It's about telling a clear, compelling story that connects with your customer or client. Whether you're talking face-to-face, maybe writing website copy, cold calling, or sharing your elevator pitch, the goal is really the same: to help people understand how you can make their life better. And on this episode, I'll share a simple framework to help you do exactly that. You can find all of the How of Business resources, including the show notes page for this episode, and learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs at thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to please join the How of Business community on Patreon. And please subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. So again, my focus on this episode is to share with you a simple structure for an effective sales pitch, whether it's in person or parts of it online, using the fundamentals of communication, empathy, and storytelling to craft and deliver an effective sales pitch. If you had 30 seconds to convince someone to do business with you, what would you say? Or what about a more formal sales process? How do you go about effectively selling what you have to offer? I'm hoping that by the end of this episode and with the free download, you'll have a simple, repeatable formula for either creating your sales pitch or refining your sales pitch so that you can communicate what you do and why it matters. The free download I have that you can find on the show notes page of this episode at thehowofbusiness.com, I'm calling it the Sales Pitch Builder Worksheet. So I encourage you to go to the website and download that tool to help you either improve or create your sales pitch. I also encourage you to listen to episode 430, Small Business Sales Fundamentals. On that episode, I do a deeper dive on the sales fundamentals for a small business. And on this episode, I'm also going to reference a few other episodes that I've done on the topic of sales and really heavily reference a great book by Donald Miller titled Building a StoryBrand. Yes, sales is really all about effectively communicating your value proposition, the value that you have to offer your customers or clients. Selling is about serving, not convincing, and certainly not about manipulation. And one of the best ways to serve your client or your customer is by making your message clear. That's where storytelling comes in. And Donald Miller talks about this in his book, Building a StoryBrand. Quote, "If you confuse, you lose. The clearest communicator always wins," end quote. I think that applies to sales as well as it applies to just about everything in small business, if not in life. We have to communicate effectively, and that's at the heart of what sales and marketing is. So your pitch, your sales pitch, is not about showing off your business or your fancy brand or your features, certainly. It's about showing your prospective customer or client what role they play in this story, the story where they are the hero. They are the focus. There are 6 core elements of every pitch, every sales pitch, and this comes directly from the book StoryBrand. The first element is the audience and the context. They are the hero. So who are you talking to and what do they want? I've spoken so much about this on this podcast, about defining your target avatar or ideal client. Who is that person or that ideal company and then the people within that company? And niching down, especially when we're starting, to focus on one target ideal client and understanding who that is. That allows us to fine-tune our messaging, our sales pitch, our marketing to be most effective as opposed to trying to sell everything to everybody, or at least to sell our solution to everybody. So number 1 core element is the audience, the context. Number 2 is the problem or the aspiration, identifying, uncovering what is that problem? What's getting in their way? What's getting in the way of our customer or client from achieving success? Number 3 is our solution and the value that provides. You are playing the role of a guide to help that customer achieve success. How can you help them win? Number 4 core element is differentiation. What makes you unique? What makes you trustworthy on this? Why should they trust you? Number 5, related to that, is proof and credibility. We need to show evidence that our plan for them, our solution, our proposed value proposition will in fact work. It's worked elsewhere perhaps. Who else have we helped? Now, we don't always have this if we're starting out. Sometimes we might be selling something that we don't have any clients yet. So that makes it a bit more challenging. And in those situations, what I find is we need to look for the early adopters in our target segment that don't rely as much on that proof. And then the 6th core element is the call to action. We must invite them to take action, whether it's the next step in the process or to ask them to buy. But what should they do next? That should not be left unsaid or unasked for. Remember, though, that throughout all of this, the customer, the client is the hero, not your brand, not your features. I encourage you then to evaluate your current pitch, or if you don't have a current pitch, the pitch that you're developing, or even if it's the content on your website, and see how you're incorporating these 6 core elements to an effective sales pitch, to telling an effective story. Instead, perhaps your copy or your marketing or your pitch might be all about you, and that's nowhere near as effective as making it all about the client and their journey, their story. This is Henry Lopez with a quick message about our show sponsor and trusted service partner, The Franchise Guide. Giuseppe Grammatico is the Franchise Guide, and he provides expert consultation services to help you find the right franchise small business. If you are considering a franchise business, I recommend consulting The Franchise Guide. Giuseppe is a franchise veteran who simplifies the process of franchising and excels at guiding his clients to the franchise model that best suits them. He helps people like you find flexibility and freedom in their lives through franchise business ownership. And as your guide, he will help you answer any of your questions about franchises. Once he gets to know you and what you're looking for, he creates your own personalized model and shows you which franchise opportunities are a best match for your needs and preferences. The best part? It's all free. There's no catch. Like with real estate or business brokers, Giuseppe's fees are paid by the franchise company. So if you're interested in a franchise business, take the first step and schedule a free, no-obligation call with Giuseppe. To learn more and to schedule your consultation with the Franchise Guide, please go to the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com. There's also a link to the show notes page in the description of this episode. So to break this down further and to help us build a pitch, I want to now lay out for you 5 steps and a process to crafting an effective sales pitch. It plays upon the 6 core elements that I just listed for you. We want to keep it simple. We want to be confident and customer focused. So we're setting the stage. And that might be something like this, especially if it's an elevator pitch. Let's say I'm a bookkeeper. I might include or say something like, I help overwhelmed business owners get their books or their financials in order so they can make smarter decisions. So I'm setting the stage. And in StoryBrand terms, this is where they enter the story. I am their guide, not the hero. They are the hero. It requires a combination of confidence and humility on our part to generate trust. Trust is such a fickle thing, and in my experience and reading experts on this topic, trust, of course, takes time to build. But we can, in our sales pitch, build trust, certainly in person, meaning when we're communicating with people, selling them. One of the keys is to listen more than we talk. And so that leads us to step 2 in this process of crafting an effective sales pitch. Discovery, asking good questions and actively listening. It's all about those good questions, but more importantly, it's about then listening as opposed to waiting to talk again. And the more prepared you are with good questions to ask, the better. Now, talk to Andy Paul, a sales expert, on episode 246, and he had this insight, this quote to share on this topic. Quote, "The best sellers are the best listeners. Great sales conversations are about 60% listening on the part of the salesperson and 40% talking on the part of the salesperson." End quote. I couldn't agree with that more, and I would think that even at a minimum, it's 60% listening. So this step, the discovery step, reveals what kind of story your customer is living right now. What is their reality? What is their problem, their fear, or their desire or aspiration? And we ask open-ended questions to learn about this, to uncover it, and even more impactfully for them to articulate, for them to share it, and for us to listen. So it might be questions along the line of, what would success look like for you? Or what's keeping you from reaching that goal? Or what's most important to you about solving this challenge? So that's step 2, discovery. Step 3 is about making this real, about activating the pain or the aspiration. We're connecting to emotion, which is so critical to get people to make a decision. We're using empathy first, and then we might be leveraging our authority. Here's a quote related to this. I had a conversation with Carol Mahoney on episode 570. She's another sales expert. And the quote is, quote, "Stop trying to convince buyers. Help them convince themselves," end quote. I think that's one of the key concepts and takeaways on sales. We are there to guide them to realizing the value. Now, when I say we, it could be through our copy on a website or in person or on a cold call or whatever the case might be. We're not going to force or manipulate somebody to make a decision, probably. We might trick them every once in a while, but we're really helping them understand what the value is for themselves. Buyers act, by the way, when they feel understood. They may act sometimes out of fear or being manipulated, but that's not usually the case. We want to help them understand and realize what happens if they don't act versus what happens if they do. So continuing with my bookkeeper example, one of the things that might get communicated here at this step is something like, without accurate books, you can't see where your money's going, but once you have clarity, you can plan with confidence. So that's step 3. Activating the pain, making it real. Now we come with our solution. So we've activated, identified the pain, they've shared it with us, we've listened, we've empathized. We now are going to ideally tailor a solution if that's the type of product or service that we're offering. It's about sharing a clear and tailored value proposition. Present your solution as a clear plan that leads to your customer or client's success. Here's another quote. Ryan Dorn, another sales expert, I spoke with him on episode 435. Quote, "Most salespeople talk too much about what they sell and not enough about what the buyer gains." So again, as I've iterated several times, because it's such a key takeaway, it really is at the heart of this, is that we have to make it about them, not about us. We need to connect our features and functions to the benefits for them, and most critically, the outcomes or the transformation that they will experience as a result. We must help buyers connect the dots of what we offer and the value it creates for them. If we don't do that, we're leaving it to them to connect the dots, and they may not be able to, or they might get confused, or they might not quite see the value. And this might lead to them choosing someone else or a no decision, for example. So we have to help them connect the dots on the value of our solution. Number 5 is the next step. What is the call to action? Could be as simple if we're selling something on a website to buy now, making that clear and easy with the least amount of friction, or sign up now or schedule a call. Or it could be, what is the next step here in the process? If it's not that they're ready to close, or maybe that's not appropriate at this point in this sales process. But always you go into it, if we're talking about a more formal sales process, any meeting, any conversation with the goal in mind of what's next. If we just leave that open-ended, then we really haven't served our clients, and we certainly are not serving ourselves. So we must ask for the business clearly and confidently. And if not for the business, because it may not be appropriate at that point in time, then certainly what is the next step? We often hesitate to ask for the business, but most people do need to be asked. And remember, every great story ends with an action or a transformation. And then related to this is follow-up. The gold is in the follow-up. And we're talking about here a more formal sales process where you make a pitch and then you have to follow up. People don't necessarily buy at that certain point in time. So follow-up is key to making sure that we stay top of mind and that we help our clients and customers realize the benefits of our value proposition. So those are the 5 steps. And again, I've deconstructed it here so that we can talk about it and I can share some ideas. You may not have all of these steps depending on what you're selling and your context and your environment. So understand that I've broken it up so that I can share some thoughts on it. Take the pieces of it that make sense for what you're selling, your process, but certainly go back to those core concepts and apply those core elements. But the 5 steps again are setting the stage, that introduction. 2, most critically, is discovery, asking and listening. 3 is understanding and activating the pain, the challenge, or the aspiration that customer or client has. 4 is tailoring and presenting our solution, if appropriate. And 5 is the close or the next step in the process. Again, you can apply these concepts in different formats. You may not have a formal sales process. Maybe where you apply this is to your elevator pitch at your next networking event. So again, you want to highlight the problem that you solve for others, or it might be website, maybe a website and the website copy. You want to structure your homepage, for example, so that it has a narrative that highlights the problem, how you can guide them to success, and a clear call to action. Or you may have a formal sales pitch for your product or service, and then all of these steps really do apply. Let me just quickly talk about some pitfalls and then some habits of great communicators. Some pitfalls to your sales pitch. Making yourself the hero instead of the customer or the client. It's all about you. I used to see so many sales presentations back in my sales career where the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes were all about the accolades that our company had received or what we had done or how powerful our solution is. Nobody really cares about that, certainly not initially, not unless you've made a connection. So you're not the hero. Your product is not the hero. The client's journey is, their story, they are the hero. Another pitfall or mistake is to talk features. Let's throw features up on the wall and see what might stick. We usually do that when we haven't done enough discovery, or we may not have an opportunity, depending on how you're selling, to understand what they really need. So we're listing it all for them and see if they might like something. We have to turn those features into benefits for that specific client, tailored to the pain or the problem or the aspiration that they have. And also then offering too many options, which is what can happen if we leave it to them to connect the dots. Too many options in a buying process often leads to confusion and paralysis on the part of the buyer. So you can't skip discovery if yours is a complex sales process. And then the other pitfall, the other mistake is not following up. Habits of great communicators, empathy. So people need to believe, and you must believe, that you really care about the problem that you're helping them solve. Deep listening skills, actively listening, not just waiting to talk again. Clear communication, so people understand you so that there's no or minimal ambiguity. A passion and a belief, of course, in what you're offering. And then integrity. And a lot of times integrity is demonstrated by, do we keep our promises? Do we follow up with what we said we were going to follow up with? It's those little things that, again, while trust typically takes a long time to build, we can make a big impact on trust if we show integrity, if we follow up, if we keep our promises through the sales process. A reminder here again from Donald Miller from his book, quote, "People don't buy the best products, they buy the ones they can understand the fastest," end quote. I think that encapsulates it perfectly. We're trying to communicate as effectively, as quickly as possible, why our solution is going to help that customer or client solve their problems. What is the value for them? So a great sales pitch tells a clear story where the customer or the client is the hero. You and your company are the guide, and your solution helps them win. So I recommend that you download the Sales Pitch Builder worksheet. You can find that again on the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com. I encourage you to apply the 6 core elements, however it might apply to what you sell, the 6 core elements to every pitch, again, whether it's online or in person, and use, as much as applicable, the 5-step process to crafting an effective sales pitch for your small business. This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining me on this episode of The How of Business. I wish you the best as you start and grow your successful and profitable small business. I release new episodes every Monday morning, and you can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the How of Business YouTube channel and my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.